Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. My name is Angelia, and today it is time for the first Friday reads of March. It is a beautiful sunny day here in the coastal bend. I can see out my window here into my backyard, and I see my beloved back there playing guitar on the patio, and he is serenading our neighbor's cat. If you are new to the channel, welcome. I did see some new people subscribing this week, so I'm so happy that you are here, and I hope that you like this video. So first of all, TV shows that we're watching. I really don't have anything exciting or new to report. We are watching Shrinking and The Last of Us as the episodes are slowly doled out to us, and it's kind of funny to think that all my life up until very recently, this is how we watch TV. You got one episode a week, and then you sat around and waited until the next one came out. And I just feel really impatient about that now. I'm starting to think I shouldn't watch anything unless the whole thing has already been put out, because I don't know, I feel very impatient about it. Especially The Last of Us. I have no familiarity with the game, so everything in the show is surprising. I'm really avoiding reading articles about it because every single episode is getting dissected minutely because there's so many fans of the game, and I don't want to know. They always do spoilers about, oh well, but in game number 2 this happens. Like, I don't want to know about it. So we are enjoying that one. We did watch a few episodes of Hacks this week, and it was funny, and love Jean Smart. I'm not sure if we're going to continue it or not. There's a heavy undertow of sadness in this show, and I don't know if I'm in the mood for that or not, but we may or may not continue it. If you love this show and think I should keep watching it, let me know in the comments. But let's move on to the books. So it was a really good reading week. Let me tell you about what I did read. The first one was not on my TBR at all, but if you have been watching my channel for a while, you have seen this book before because it has been shelf shaming me for over a year. And I finally read it, The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. And I got this in that Barnes & Noble half-price hardcover sale, not the one at the end after Christmas this past year, but the year before. So it's been on my shelf for almost a year and a half, and I have brought this out numerous times and then somehow never read it. And finally, I was in between books, and I have all these books sitting on my cart, and suddenly it dawned on me that this was actually in my shelves, and I had just enough time, and I thought it was good timing too to read one more book by a Black author before Black History Month was over. And so it came in right under the wire, and I'm really glad I finally took time to read this. And I don't know why I'm holding it like this. It takes place, you know what, I'm just going to put it down. I don't know why I'm holding it at all. It takes place right at the end of the Civil War. Emancipation has happened, and the soldiers are straggling back home slowly. Everyone is sort of in flux. So in this small Georgia town, all of this is occurring. There's sort of a tent city in town because there are so many displaced soldiers and also slaves who have left their various farms and plantations, but they don't have anywhere to go. It's like I said, it's a small Georgia town. No one wants to employ them. No one wants to pay for what they were just getting for free. Nobody is going to rent, a room to them. So they're living in tents, or they're just traveling northwards. And in this time and place, there is a couple named George and Isabel. They're a middle-aged couple whose only son, Caleb, had gone off to the war. They're waiting for news about Caleb. I won't say more about that because it's an important aspect of the story. But George is out on his property one day, and he encounters these two young men who are brothers, Landry and Prentice, and they are slaves who have been freed, and they have left the neighboring plantation. George is a landowner. He has never worked a day in his life. He just has a bunch of property inherited from his father, and every now and then he sells pieces of it for his livelihood, but he's never really done anything. But he has decided at this point in time that he wants to farm some of his land and do something uh, profitable and productive and helpful. And he just has this kind of late breaking desire to be of more use to himself and to the town and his family. So he decides he wants to start a peanut farm. His wife is just like, really? And he doesn't know much about it, but he encounters these two brothers and he makes them a proposition that if they will work for him, he will pay them the going wage and give them a place to live in the barn. The brothers are very reluctant to agree to this work proposition, feeling that they're just going to be transferring themselves from one white man to another. But George assures them that it is not like that at all. He is respectful of their independence and he's going to pay them accordingly. And so they start a kind of a wary alliance working on the property. So tensions are rising, and in town, people are also angry with George because they feel like if he's going to hire someone, he should hire some of these young returned soldiers. And, George is not interested in that whatsoever. He's happy with these two hardworking men that he's found who really need this help. They're trying to save up money to travel north and find their mother who was sold away years ago. So that is one situation causing turmoil in the town. And then the other situation involves two young men from the town who were childhood friends and have returned after the war, who are secretly also lovers. And of course, if you are secretly gay lovers hiding out in the woods, somebody is going to see you. And so there is more conflict and drama ensuing. So a lot of things kind of boil up all at once. So the first part of the story has some familiar scenarios if you have read historical fiction from this time period and this setting in the US, with the slave owners who are cruel, capricious, irrationally angry, brutal, abusive. It's hard to read, but you can't escape it if you're going to read a book about that particular setting. So we have some of that, and then just that aftermath of people not wanting to accept the change that is occurring. But for me, what the best part of the book is the last third. So the first part, I'm reading along, and kind of the things that occur, it's very beautifully written, but there wasn't really anything very surprising in the plot. It does rotate amongst the main characters, which I do enjoy, seeing the point of view of Isabel, George, Prentice, Caleb, and it's kind of rotating around different people's stories. But then the last third, after all of the big conflicts have blown up, then the aftermath of that and what everybody does going forward, to me, that was the freshest part of the story, where I didn't know what was going to happen, what the characters would decide to do, the growth that would occur, the paths that they'd take. That to me is where the story was really, really gripping. So I did like the book overall. I thought it was really strong. I thought the writing was great. I think it's Nathan Harris's first novel. Yes, and he lives in Austin, Texas, although the book is set in Georgia. And I am interested to see what he writes next, because some of the phrases and descriptions in this book are really, really lovely. The story was solid, especially that last third. And it kind of did leave me hanging. Like, I really would love to know, if you went back to all of these people 10 years later, what are they doing? How did they fare? What happened next? So I'm so glad that I finally read The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. And you do find out, if you keep reading the book, I think it's somewhere buried in the middle, you find out what that phrase means to one of the main characters in the story. So that was really the last book that I finished in the month of February. And then as we turn the corner into March, I started looking at my books that I had selected, things I talked about in my March TBR, and fitting in with the different themes of March that I have embarked upon. And so I did read Exiles is it The Exile? No, just Exiles by Jane Harper. And this was a really good mystery book. I got this from the library. It is her new book. And I've read it. I think she's written 5 or 6 novels. Let's see. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 5th one. I've read them all. 3 of them, including this one, have the main character, Aaron Falk, who is a detective who, at the time of this story, and I think the one before it, is working for, oh, and I forgot to say, they're Australian. And he works out of Melbourne in sort of a financial office. He investigates financial fraud. First book was The Dry, which was made into a movie. And then the second book with this particular character is called Force of Nature, and then this one, Exiles. In this book, Aaron Falk travels to a small town to attend the christening of his friend's child. He had gone briefly to the town a year before, but the christening got called off because one of the people who came to town, who is from there and part of this group of friends and family that was assembling, went missing, and she was never found. She went to the fairgrounds. There's a food and wine festival that takes place that same weekend. She was supposed to meet up with her teenage daughter from a previous relationship. I guess I should back this up. The woman who was missing used to live there, has a daughter with someone from the town. Then she married another guy from the town, but they moved to the city. And then they just had a baby. She came to town for the weekend, and the food festival and that birthday and the christening were all happening the same weekend. But that first night, when the fair shut down, her baby was found on the grounds in her stroller, and the woman is missing. Her husband had gone to have dinner with his parents, and he had dropped her off at the fairgrounds. She was supposed to meet up with her daughter, and he went and had dinner with his parents at a nearby restaurant. So a year later, her disappearance has never been solved. All they found was one of her shoes in the nearby reservoir. Her teenage daughter is very keen on finding out what really happened, does not believe that her mother would just commit suicide or just abandon her and the new baby. Some people also feel this way. Other people feel like it was probably a case of postpartum depression. So it's an unsolved case. There's another unsolved case of a hit and run that happened several years before in this same group of friends. So Aaron comes to town for the weekend, not associated with any of that, but just as a friend who has been asked to be the godfather of his friend's baby. That is the kind of the setup, is the one where the detective is not even on this case, but how could he resist combing through and taking a look at all of the pieces. So it is good. It is suspenseful. It has lots of threads and characters. I did not figure it out until close to the end, and the author did this to me on purpose. So I sort of hit an aha at the same time as Aaron Falk does late in the story. But I really didn't guess totally all of the threads until right at the end when I was supposed to, where you get the fun of going, oh, I see it, and then it comes together. So I found it to be a pretty smart little thriller. And if you like those kind of mysteries, this would be a fun one to read for mystery March, mystery madness, or any time that you want to read a mystery. Especially if you have enjoyed her other books, and if you haven't, you might want to go back and start with The Dry. And I really like the 3 books with Aaron Falk better than the other 2 standalones. I enjoyed those as well, but I feel like these 3 are stronger because there's some ongoing character growth for Aaron Falk that carries through the 3 books. So those are the 2 novels that I finished this week. I also got started on David Copperfield, which is the mammoth that I selected for March of the Mammoths. And I've made a pretty good dent. Let me see. I am on page 103. I'm on chapter 8, which is called My Holidays, Especially One Happy Afternoon. And I love the Victorian chapter heading styles that Dickens uses. Wilkie Collins does it too. And every now and then you find it in a contemporary novel as well. I remember the Luminaries did it. Stephen King did it in his latest book, Fairy Tales. But I love those I love that when there's just that chapter heading that's like a little blurb about the chapter. What I've noticed is that the division of chapters is not evenly paced. Like some chapters are very short, 3 or 4 pages, others are longer. I don't know how that all panned out when this was originally released in serial form. I feel like I would have been really frustrated if I waited all week and then I got a 5-page chapter, and I've enjoyed it so far, and I'm really glad that I decided to read it so close on the heels of reading Demon Copperhead, because the parallels, the characters that line up. Right now I'm at the part where David is in the school and he's met Tommy Traddles, who draws skeletons on everything. And of course, if you have read Demon Copperhead, you have met Tommy in that book, who also draws skeletons all the time. But I'm thinking, in the current day, it's not that weird that a kid likes to doodle skeletons or skulls, but I'm thinking that's pretty odd for somebody in Dickens' time to constantly relieve his stress by doodling skeletons. But I'm loving it so far. I'm really glad I decided to read this, and I am enjoying my pace of reading just 2 or 3 chapters at a time. So we will see how this goes. This is my grand experiment of reading a book on the side. And then finally, after I finished reading Exiles yesterday, I didn't want to pick up another novel straight away. So I grabbed, where is it? I grabbed Antarctica, the short stories by Claire Keegan that I have planned to read this month for Irish literature. I can't remember what that theme is formally, that challenge is formally called, but it's about Irish writers. And I was so intrigued because when I showed this in my TBR video, several people commented about Antarctica, and their comments led me to realize that this collection might be really different than how I am imagining. So I meant to just read the title story, but I ended up reading like the first 4. I didn't, I was unable to stop. Out of the 4, if someone gave me these stories and asked me to read them without telling me who the authors were, and I didn't know that they were Claire Keegan or all the same author, I would say that only one of the 4 would I have picked out for sure, right away guessed it was Claire Keegan. 1 or 2 of the others that might have been in my lineup of possible guesses. And one of them, that the title story, Antarctica, I never would have guessed in a million years that Claire Keegan wrote that story. Now, I realize that she wrote this well before, like 20 years before the books that I am more familiar with. Maybe 10 years before Forster and 20 years before Small Things Like These. But very, very different in subject matter, tone. The first story is just downright disturbing and creepy. Some of the others are, I don't know. So I'm interested to read on and think about the ideas, style, themes, tones that I might see later. I definitely felt it in the second story, which is called, long boring interlude, Men and Women. That is my favorite one so far, and that is the story that involves a family going to a New Year's Eve celebration and a young girl who is just witnessing and thinking about the different roles for men and women that she sees in her family and in her town. That story was very Keegan-esque to me, and I loved it. At this particular crossroads in my reading, starting another reading week, here's my dilemma. My plan was to read 1 or 2 of these stories and then move on to the next novel. So I could still do that, or I could just go whole hog and keep reading the stories all the way through and then start another novel. Decisions. So I don't know. What I need to start is The Longest Journey by Ian Forster, because the Forster read along has this is this month's selection, and the Discord has opened up, and I'd like to be able to participate and have something to say. I'm a little curious about what my reading experience will be with this book, because looking it up and seeing reviews of it on Goodreads, which I don't I don't do Goodreads myself, but I sometimes open it up to read reviews, and they're pretty mixed. It's not his most popular book. It's probably his least read novel, least discussed novel. I really wasn't aware of it until this read along started. So I'm interested to know why that is. Is it not as strong? Is it just not what people expected? After reading the short stories and being surprised by some of his content there, I'm kind of wondering. The description on the back makes it sound comic, but I feel like that's probably misleading because that's how the description sounded on Where Angels Fear to Tread, and that was not a funny book. So we shall see. So that is pretty much it. If you have read any of these books and have a comment on them, let me know. Or if you're reading something else that is really wonderful or some horrible flaming dud, you can let me know that as well. What's going on this week? Anything I should be aware of to try to watch based on what I seem to like. We're always looking for ideas for that too. We're going to have an artsy evening. It's the first Friday art walk downtown, some gallery openings, and also it's a freebie day at the art museum, and there is a show we wanted to see. So we're going to do that later and maybe eat out downtown. So I hope that you have a wonderful weekend in store with lots of good reading. Let me know in the comments what's up, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye bye.